Welcome to another episode of Fearless and Free TV. Today I'm going to be talking about overcoming racism. Now, I'm bringing this subject out right now because of what's going on right now in America with the trauma that's playing out in cities all over our country. And there are so many of us who are here right now in support of the Black community. Enough is enough. And the reason I'm talking about this now from my own personal experience with it is hopefully that through my own experience of how I grew up and how I learned to recognize racism and how I worked through it, that hopefully that helps a lot of other people as well. This is something we cannot continue to propagate into the future. We cannot afford to take this into our new reality that we're all wanting to create. It's the reality that's based in love. This is a disease to the human family. We really need to heal. And it is something all of us need to work through and recognize within ourselves, because it's been such a part of our collective reality for, well, literally since human beings became human beings. So we've always divided ourselves up into, divide and conquer, and one group is better than another group, and one group is worth more than another group. And right now, what we are dealing with still in this country is the issue of misbelief that Black lives are worth less than everyone else, and we can't do that anymore. So with my own story, this isn't the easiest thing for me to talk about. It's partly because it's it's an inflammatory subject. It's a very painful subject. It is it's a blight on the human story. It is a collective unresolved issue that we really, really need to resolve. And because it's an unresolved issue, it gets poked every once in a while. It's like that sore spot that's on your body, and then somebody keeps poking at it. And until we as a collective resolve it, that problem's going to keep getting poked. So I'm hoping that I'm doing my part of being able to heal this trauma to our collective human body. So I grew up in this incredibly fundamentalist cult, commune. I know the word cult has been used for, it's been misunderstood in itself, but it is a word that people relate to. It was a very, very small community. And that community was part of a much larger community that was based in, I grew up in Montana. The larger part of that community was in Utah. And we had a very, very tightly constructed belief system. So one of the beliefs that I had as a child was that Black people were literally the spawn of Satan, that they were descendants of Cain, that God had cursed Cain and all of his posterity for the rest of forever, and that they were not really, in a sense, not really human, and that they were meant to be slaves, that someday after we died, Black people would be our servants in heaven. And when I was really little, I was taught that if I had never seen a Black person, I had just heard about them. I was taught that if I was ever even in the presence of a Black person, I could go to hell. If I ever touched a Black person, I would be tainted forever. And I wouldn't be let into heaven if I even allowed a Black person to touch me. And so I grew up being absolutely terrified of Black people, even though I'd never even met one. That's how deep it was embedded in me. And when I was 12 years old, like I said, I grew up in Montana. When I was 12 years old, I went to Southern California to meet my grandma. I'd never met my grandma before. And she lived in this area in Los Angeles that when she moved there in the 1950s, it was a very Caucasian community, and it eventually had turned into an African community. So it was the first time I'd ever seen a dark person. And I was really curious. I think there was a part of me that didn't really believe what my parents were trying to tell me. So one day I went outside to play with the other kids. We were in my grandma's apartment, and there were a bunch of kids out playing, and they were all black kids. And I went outside and I was playing with these kids, and I reached over and I touched this other girl that was my age. And I was expecting, I think I was expecting her to feel like a snake, because the snake was the devil, and I was so scared. And when I touched her, she was just like me, soft and warm. And I got in so much trouble for that. And I had all that guilt inside of me, thinking that I was going to go to hell for touching this little girl who was so nice. And I think that's when I really started to question my parents' beliefs about that. And because and there were other times in my life where I was like, if these people are so bad, why are they so kind? So that was my first experience. Growing up in Montana, I didn't really know any. Montana is or at the time at least, was very monochromatic, very white. And although we grew up incredibly poor, and I always felt like everybody else had more than me, I didn't really understand how privileged I was until fairly recently, and realizing that how much more I actually had than people of color. And after hearing so many other people's stories, I finally get it. I finally understand that as uneducated and unsuccessful as my family was growing up in the literally one step above trailer trash, we still had it so much better than other people. And so I thought, after I moved away from home, I let all of my parents' religious beliefs go. I wanted nothing to do with anything they believed, because I felt like everything I grew up with in my parents' religion was hurtful and limiting to women and to human beings, basically limiting to anyone who wasn't a white male. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago, I was at Agape Spiritual Center, I think, one of the loveliest places to be. It's really the only spiritual center I go to, because I'm not a church person. I had enough of that as a kid, and yet Agape never felt like a church to me. It was this beautiful, loving space where everybody treats each other with dignity and respect and kindness and love. And so one day I was leaving the Agape, and I hugged a friend of mine who was black, and I felt my body go into a panic attack. And I realized that even though mentally and emotionally I had let all that stuff go years ago, it was still inside my body. My body was terrified of my friend. And that's when I realized that I got to do something about this. This is not okay. And so I went on a quest inside myself to figure out how to get over these beliefs, because I can't go through life not being able to hug my friends. And I can't go through life being afraid of some of the most extraordinary people on the planet. And so it's been a quest. And I think it's really important to let people understand that when it's that embedded in you as a child, how difficult it is, one, to recognize it, and two, to process it. And so I started this process of asking myself, what else do I need to look at? What else do I need to look at? What else do I need to? And so all of these beliefs from my childhood about racism and unworthiness and the color of a person's skin and religious beliefs about where color came from, all of that, I had to do a lot of unpacking. And in that process of unpacking all of those beliefs, I had to look at every single one of them, and I had to apply forgiveness to them. I had to apologize to to the Black community as a whole, not necessarily to each Black person, because it's not an individual thing. It's a collective thing. And I had to teach my body how to not be afraid. And I had to apply a lot of self-forgiveness about to not hold myself in anger and resentment for something that I didn't even know was still inside me. And I had to apply forgiveness to the belief system that I grew up with, because I've discovered that until I forgive my past and the people in my past, that I'm still dragging that around with me. And I still work on it. You know, one of the things that I want to share is that this is a mental disease, and it is a constant, continual. Am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? Is what I'm doing or saying hurtful in any way? I want to know. I really want to know if there's anything that I say or that I do that feels racist. I want to know from the bottom of my heart so I don't do it again. And I want to know what I can do to make it better. What can I do to help support the Black community so that we don't carry this forward? And so I'm constantly keeping myself in check. And I know there are a lot of other people out there who are like me, who has so much been in the collective consciousness that it is a continual growth experience to try to dig deeper and deeper into trying to heal what's going on inside of ourselves so that it doesn't get propagated forward. And I look forward to the day when this is old news. When someday when we can look back and say, can you believe anyone ever believed that? And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of making sure that nobody else ever has to suffer with the belief that anyone is worth less or value less than anyone else. And I am committed to whatever it takes to make sure that Black lives not only matter, but they are valued. And that whatever it is that's inside of me that might still need resolved, I will do whatever it takes to resolve it. And that, yeah. I think really what I wanted to share here is for a lot of people who might still be battling their own childhood racism ideas, is to really get in touch with your body. Because the mental mechanism, we might still have those beliefs. You know, those beliefs are long gone. They're not in there anymore. They don't play in the head anymore. And and even emotionally in our heart, they're not there anymore. Our love for our dark-skinned friends is immeasurable, just as much as with anyone else. And so it's about listening to your body. What does your body feel like when you're in a grocery line or in an environment, and feel that. If there's still a feeling of angst or a feeling of unease, you will know what that is, because we're all raised with it differently. If you're still feeling that, then there's still something inside of you that needs resolution. And so I really wanted to share that with all of you, to understand that that's how deeply this is ingrained. We can pull it out of our mental makeup, we can pull it out of our emotional makeup, and we also need to pull it out of our physical makeup. It literally lodges in our genetic makeup. And when we can learn to extract that from the genetic makeup, then it doesn't get passed on to our kids. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but in spiritual psychology, we know that our beliefs actually are integrated within our body, and we can remove beliefs from our cellular makeup with persistence, with the courage to be able to dig in and pull out our beliefs. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's really painful, because there's stuff in there we don't want to look at, we don't want to acknowledge, we don't want to admit that it's still in there. And yet, if we're going to get to this new place in our collective human experience, we have to be willing to do the work. We have to be willing to dig deep into every single one of our beliefs and see if they truly are loving, and if there's any fear associated with them at all, they are false. And if you're in an environment where you are feeling afraid completely unconsciously, it's false. That is fear trying to gain control. And so know that it isn't easy, and it's up to every single one of us to resolve our issues inside of ourselves, because racism, as I said, it's a collective unresolved issue. It's a really sore spot on the body of humanity. As a friend of mine put it the other day, it's like a broken leg on the body of humanity, and we can't move forward until we heal that broken leg. And that it's going to keep getting kicked until we finally heal it. So in order to heal this collective broken limb, requires every single one of us individually to heal it inside of ourselves. And that takes vigilance. It takes a willingness to really look deep inside of our beliefs. It takes a willingness to feel how our bodies respond to situations. It is a continual conscious practice. And like everything else, the more we do it, the easier it gets. And I look forward to the day when it's not an issue anymore, when it's just part of our story that we have learned from, and that it doesn't move forward with us. So I wanted to share that with you. Remember to apply loads and loads and loads of compassion to yourself along with everyone else while you're working through this process. This is, again, it's something that each of us has to do within ourselves, because everything we do within ourselves becomes part of the collective consciousness. So it's our own personal responsibility to face our own stuff, to look at it, to transmute it, to heal it, and to apply forgiveness to it. Because until we do, it's going to keep going forward, and we can't afford to do that anymore. This is one human family, and we can no longer afford to have any member of our family be discounted, and that we need to let our Black brothers and sisters know that we will no longer tolerate their being devalued. We love you, we support you, and we're with you.